Coming up on Unwritten.
Mentally healthy and well people don't hurt each other.
What is it about therapy that you think helps?
We have the power to wipe ourselves off the planet. We have the power to destroy life as we know it. We have the power to wipe ourselves out. So the whole game has changed.
We're called the United States, but we're divided, and we always
Right.
will be, because we always have the two sides when it comes to, like, we don't have just one party. How is a country gonna be united if you always have two divisive, different core values?
Even though you and I are 50% part of a relationship, I'm still 100% responsible for my own behavior.
How do you help somebody who's narcissistic?
The most entrenched, dysfunctional behaviors that human beings have come from one of the biggest blessings of the pain that I went through as a child and a young adult was that it really made me sensitive to pain in other people.
Can you share some moments of your past and what made you inspired to write America in Therapy?
Yeah. Well, like many people, I experienced some trauma in my childhood. And for the most part, or for maybe all of the part, I didn't remember what happened to me because I was so little. And it kind of created a shadow over my life. And kind of long story short, I just never understood who I was. I didn't understand why I felt so different from other people, why I felt unlovable and didn't belong. And I eventually, when I was in my mid 30s and I had had my third child, I went to therapy for the first time. And when I grew up, therapy was not a thing people did. It wasn't even anything anybody talked about. And so, but by the time I was in my mid 30s, some of the people I knew were exploring psychotherapy, and I was at a pretty um, really dark place in my life. I was in a very unhappy marriage. I had three little kids and felt very disconnected from myself. And I want to just back up to say quickly that even with that, I had many experiences growing up where I did have a profound connection to myself, to something higher, to nature, and to a source of love that seemed like it was beyond me. But those experiences didn't last. And so I didn't know how to really recreate them or stay in those experiences in a more sustainable way. And when I went to therapy, it really changed my life because for the first time, I began to understand that our early conditioning and the experiences we have and the things that we come to believe about ourselves really impact the way we develop and the choices we make later on and the coping mechanisms we have. And so all of a sudden, I felt like before I went to therapy, I felt like a puzzle that had just been thrown on the floor and I didn't know how to put it back together. And and as I began to uncover and remember what happened to me and understand that I wasn't what happened to me, I was at the effects of what happened to me, but there was really an essential goodness and clarity inside myself. I began to kind of come out of that dark space, and then I eventually became a therapist myself and left that marriage um, and was a therapist for quite a long time. And I just really actually totally retired this year. And what inspired me to write the book America in Therapy was a combination of my own experience with being on a healing journey. And I would say journey because I think the journey doesn't really end. It just revolves into or evolves into different levels. Um, and also my many years of experience as a therapist, really understanding deeply um, family dynamics and how we're affected by the role models and expectations of the people that we depend on, especially early in life, but also from our larger communities, from our friend groups and schools and places of worship and businesses And the whole tenor of the psychological environment of the country and of the world really today, I think is impacting everyone in a very profound way. And I decided to take that lens that I had learned from family dynamics and family therapy and the big picture of looking at your own intrapsychic dynamics through a family systems lens. I wanted to take that lens and look at our country through that. Like, what are the family dynamics of America? To what extent are they healthy? To what extent are they abusive or neglectful or dysfunctional? And how is that impacting whole segments of our population? How does it impact us? And what can we do to heal? What can we each do to help heal this escalating violence and divisiveness and kind of win-lose, extreme win-lose paradigm that we're stuck in, rather than coming together and really being a united states and being a united group of people who really try to work together. And I know it sounds Pollyanna-ish in the world that we live in today, but one of my main motivations for writing the book is that I see us, if we continue the way we're going with this escalation in arms development and war, and in targeting vulnerable populations, and in there's so many things I could mention here. The huge and growing divide between the wealthy and the impoverished. Um, that I think we're in danger as a species, not just as Americans or people living in the United States. I think we're in danger of using the weapons we create or destroying our earth habitat through the rape and pillage of the land or the misuse of Mother Nature. And so I feel, for me personally, the lens that I bring, and I think there are many lenses to bring to what's happening today, is the psychological one, because mentally healthy and well people don't hurt each other. They don't wage war. They don't pick up guns and shoot innocent people that they don't even know. And so these are signs of mental ill health escalating in our country and in the world. And I really wanted to address it through that lens, because we know so much now about how to interrupt these cycles of violence and divisiveness and hatred and discrimination and addiction and withholding. Um, we know a lot about how to interrupt those cycles and how to prevent them from recurring. Not perfectly, of course. And there's always exceptions, and there's people we don't know how to treat, but we know so much about what helps people heal from the wounds that generate the kind of violence that they're displaying in the world today. And I wanted to bring that to national conversation.
What do you think about therapy? What is it about therapy that you think helps? And what about people who don't believe in therapy, or they think the only people that go to therapy are crazy people, or
Right.
this whole misconception? But yeah, what do you think about just therapy helps people start to heal?
Well, my experience, is that it actually takes courage to go to therapy. It takes strength of your being to tolerate the distress of uncovering sometimes very painful aspects of your own past. And sometimes what that is for people is not just what has happened to them that was hurtful, abuse or neglect or some kind of dysfunction that they experienced with other people in their family or in larger settings, but also coming to grips with sometimes the ways we've treated other people that aren't necessarily so great. And I think that can be very confronting for people. And I think it's confronting for our country to really look at our own past, not with the lens of who to blame and who to hate and what to criticize, but in therapy, you look at your past to really uncover the formative experiences that you need to rework to come into better alignment with your true self and to come into alignment with a greater self-expression in the world of what it is you really want to do and who you really are. So the purpose is to find healing. It's not to find blame, even if other people have hurt you. And many of us have been hurt by other people. The purpose isn't just to point fingers and point a gun. The purpose is to understand where we came from. You know, So many people that came and populated the United States over many, many years were immigrants fleeing tremendous trauma themselves, war and poverty and religious discrimination and persecution, um, and they brought their traumas with them at a time in history where nobody dealt with trauma. We just came here and we survived the best we could, right? Um, and today, I think, for the first time, perhaps in the history of people as I know them, and maybe other cultures had this, there's a really growing understanding that trauma repeats itself, that we tend to repeat what we know, either as being easily targeted for victimization or identifying with the aggressor and becoming like the victimizers. And these cycles don't necessarily interrupt themselves by themselves. And that's what I think the beauty of the whole world of psychology has to offer today. And I think it's the big missing piece in national conversation.
Yeah, we have they call it the generational curses or the generational traumas.
Right?
Unless some offspring or lineage down the line stops it, it's gonna keep going on and on.
Right. And what
Um,
you see in therapy is that people actually do break that cycle. Again, is it
mm,
perfect? No. But any attempt anyone makes to break that cycle is a contribution to everyone.
how do you feel about the draft? I think they just passed a thing into legislation about starting the draft again. I feel like that's just it's promoting more of the past, right? It's like, how
I
do you
think
feel about that?
I think honestly, I think that we probably really know, and maybe we don't, or maybe we don't want to know, that war is completely obsolete. We have the power to wipe ourselves off the planet. We have the power with our weapons and our chemical pollutants and our drones and our nuclear weapons. We have the power to destroy life as we know it. And if any individual family was just stockpiling guns and not feeding their children, we would say they were mentally unwell. And yet we still act like war could protect us. When what are we looking at when we even look at what war is doing around the world today? At this moment, thousands upon thousands of people who have nothing to do with it are dead and dying and starving. For what? So, psychologically, I would just say, and here again is where I think the lens of psychology is just so helpful and grounding in a very simple way. People
Mm,
come to therapy to get out of the wars they're in, the wars they're waging with themselves, with their spouses, with their children, with their bosses, with their communities. Most people, if you ask the average person, we want in our own lives, we want peace. We want love. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we're valued by someone somewhere. We want to feel like our life has a meaning and purpose. And one of the things that I think most of us want, and feel free to disagree with me, is that we would like the people around us when they're angry or upset or they disagree with us, we would like them to be committed to nonviolent conflict resolution. I don't know
mm.
anyone who wants more violence and in their own lives.
Do you think it's in our nature?
I do think that there's an aggressive piece in our nature. We're animals for one thing, and
Yeah.
animals have survived for untold centuries, right? Or
Either
millennia or
fight or flight,
whatever.
right? Yeah, it's fight
Yeah.
or flight.
Right. But we're at a different place in our evolution right now, where
Mm,
fight or flight cannot be the only two options. And I think the third option is cooperate. I think
mm.
the third option is to come together to actually make the world that we live in sustainable for all human beings. Um,
Yeah,
because
it's like
fight,
we just keep repeating the endless cycle of building an empire. Like I think Ray Dalio, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He wrote
no,
Principles. he wrote this book and he's been on a bunch of podcasts saying like he spent like millions, like he's a billionaire and he spent millions and billions of dollars into researching the cycles of history. Like
Oh.
like he went like out of his way to find like old records and just a lot of money. And what he found is that we do indeed like repeat the same cycle. And
Mhm.
he predicted that America, just like the Roman Empire at the time, was uh, basically the world power, seen as the world power. You don't want to mess with them, and but they fell, right? They fell,
Right.
and it took them almost 1,000 years, or it's like 700 to 1,000 years that they ruled the world, like America.
Mhm.
And America's pretty much following that same path where we became this world power, and then it starts to get out of hand, and the empire starts to
Mhm.
fall.
Yeah,
So
go
yeah,
ahead.
what do you think? I guess the world as a whole, not just, I know it's, you wrote the book about America, but what do you think the
Right.
world as a whole could do to end the cycle? Do you think it
Right.
starts with therapy or the individual?
I think, well, for one thing, I wrote the book, America in Therapy. It really is about the entire,
Mm,
global population, but I'm not familiar with other cultures the way I
yeah,
am with the country I grew up in. So I address it to America, but I've talked to people in podcasts too that are from many different
other
countries all over the
countries.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because the principles are about human nature. They're not just about America. And
yeah.
I think one of the things is that that human beings actually can't handle the level of power that we've become addicted to. I think it's not in our nature
Mm,
to be able to handle that level of power, um, and
the power
really,
of a god.
yeah, and hold some idea of other people's rights, other people's individuality, other people's
Mm,
needs, um,
yeah.
and within that, not just a sense of the reality and the importance of every individual, but also that no one person actually does know what's best for all people. We don't. And with the extremes of power that people are able to wield today, um, there's sort of an assumption, like you said, of sort of like of godliness, like they know best. And on
Like
a
I know
psychological,
all, like just listen to me, just
right,
follow what I say. That's where I think politics gets out of hand.
right.
I think there is a place for politics in the world. Like I think it needs some structure
Yeah.
and like safety and stuff, but I don't think you should. I don't know. I don't know much about politics, but I think they shouldn't be basically telling people what they can and can't do all the time. You know?
Well, I think the danger is when it lies in the hands of only a few people with very
Yeah,
specific interest. I think
yeah.
if we had a true democracy where we really invited all voices to be heard and we
Mm,
honored all voices and we actually came from a place of two things. One, where we know that other people actually have something to contribute that we don't. I don't know it all. I have a psychological lens on what's going on that I think is very valuable. Do I know economics? No. Do I know science? No. I want to hear from people who know about how economy works or how the best way to grow plants without injuring the earth. If we had that sort of collective vision that we're all important at this table, indigenous people are important at this table, Black people are important at this table, women, people who are disabled, all of
diversity.
this, yeah, and that we honor diversity because we actually all want to be included ourselves, and no one of us,
Mm,
represents everyone. And then the other piece of that is will come together and share our best ideas for how to survive here, really, how to best survive here on this planet
I think
together.
because the politics in the world, when it's like politics it's hard because I'm not too knowledgeable about it, but to me, if it seems like tribal, it seems so like tribal. Like think about the when I think about it, I think of okay, what did we first do when we started building communities? We had little villages, and then we had little tribes, and there was a chief or whatever of that tribe, and they led the village and helped cooperate. But when they seen somebody that looked different or that wasn't a part of their tribe, what did they
Right.
do? They
Right.
felt threatened and triggered whatever anxiety you feel your
Right.
safety is on the line, your people's safety are on the line. I feel like we're just doing that, the tribalness, but on a bigger uh modernized scale, you know.
I think that's true, and I think that we're at this turning point in human history where it's really important to know that, a tribe might have felt threatened by a neighboring tribe, and they might have even killed all of those neighbors that they felt scared of or felt were gonna take their territory or
Mm,
whatever, they were defending against. Um, they could kill all the people in that tribe or make them slaves or do whatever they did, and the world that we live in was not necessarily harmed, you know? Life went
mm,
on. But today, with the power of nuclear weapons, for instance, and the power to devastate the planet with the way that we're treating the earth and the water and the air, we have the power to wipe ourselves out. So the whole game has changed.
mm.
And I think there's great resistance to knowing that war might have kept that one tribe safe and, whoever got to live after it was over.
But it was just
Um,
in that one little village. It wasn't the
right.
entire world, and humanity's life was on the line.
Right. And so many of the species that we depend on for our life are on the line. And so I think it really requires that we make a huge evolutionary leap and know that I say it this way, that today's weapons will never make us safe as a human race, a species that wants to continue on this earth. Weapons will not make us safe because the weapons we have can destroy us. The only thing that
Mm,
will make us safe is safe people. That's what
mm.
will make, and that to me is a mental wellness issue because mentally well people do not want to kill other people. They want to sit down and work out either the problems or the disagreements that they have peacefully, or they agree to separate in peace.
Mm.
And that those are signs of mental health and well-being, and they need to be talked about on the largest levels because
I
we're
think,
really at a turning point, I think.
yeah, I think because when you get into politics, things like to be taken to the extreme. And, they should be taken there just for discussion, but I don't think things should always be taken to the extreme. And then also, it's funny because, like you said in the beginning, we're called the United States, but we're divided, and we always
Right.
will be because we always have the two sides when it comes to like we don't have just one party. We have
Right.
two sides, always divided, two different thought processes and beliefs and values. How is a country gonna be united if you always have two divisive,
Right.
different
Right.
value, like different core values,
Right. Well,
always every 4 years? Let's see if our values change, or let's we're coming up a couple months, and
I know.
it's crazy.
I know. Well, there's a lot of things, like several things came into my head at once and I probably won't remember them all.
Mm,
But what I want to say is that, again, this is where I think some of the tools and some of the understandings of the best psychology and psychotherapy really have a part to play. Because when people come to therapy, let's just say a couple comes to therapy, because that's an obvious one. Couples don't come to therapy when they're getting along. They come together when they really disagree, when they can't work it out, when they're fighting, when they're on the verge of divorce, whatever. Something seriously painful and disruptive is going on, like it is in our country today. Um, and what the best therapy offers are a couple of things. One is the tools for deep listening without just reacting and having, the back and forth that people were already doing at home that wasn't working for them. They were fighting. One person, asserts their opinion and yells and shouts or walks out, and the other person is triggered and they do their version of reaction. And they don't get anywhere. And we see that on a huge sociological, political, psychological level in the world today among all kinds of groups of people. Um, and so some of the principles, people come to therapy. And again, I don't know that America wants to come to therapy yet. What I hope is that we can help educate each other so that we see the need for taking a different approach to human relations. And so when people come to therapy, obviously they have some motivation for that. But the two big things that I think therapy has to offer are one, that we really help people learn nonviolent, peaceful communication and conflict resolution skills. And those skills are critical to, I think, the survival of the human race. And basically what they involve, among other things, are that we start with restraining ourselves. We leave our psychological or physical weapons at the door. They don't come in. We don't scream at each other. We don't call each other names. We don't put each other down. We don't roll our eyes when the other person is talking. And we help people restrain because sometimes people are very upset. They're very hurt. They're very angry. They're very frightened. They feel very betrayed, or whatever their intense emotion is that generates um, behaviors and attitudes that aren't constructive for healing. They're human feelings, but we need to restrain them. Like, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to call you names. I will do my best to enter your world and hear you the way I want you to hear me. And that's the foundation of it. I'm going to try to be for you who I want you to be for me. I want you to listen to me deeply. I want you to understand me. I want you to validate whatever you can validate about my needs or my beliefs or my point of view, because you want the same from me. And we can give it best to each other when we get it. So we're teaching people to restrain their most reactive impulses, reflect on themselves. Where am I coming from? Am I coming from a place I actually really honor? Or am I just reacting out of an old wound or out of fear? Um, what can I take responsibility for about myself? Can I talk to you in a different tone of voice? Can I have a more open mind? Can I look and see, is there something I need to be responsible for? Is there something I've done that's actually hurt you? Just the way, of course, when I come to therapy and you're my partner and we're fighting, I want you to take responsibility for what I think you did to me, or said to me or whatever that you're not doing. So it's all about restraint, reflection on myself, taking responsibility for myself, making amends for whatever's mine to make amends for, and really committing to find some kind of reconciliation with you. Where can we come together? What new agreements can we make so that we can actually reconnect and actually want to work together to work out our relationship? And if we brought those principles, and let me tell you, these are not easy to do. When people are very hurt, when they're very angry, when they're
Yeah.
very frightened, when they're very triggered into old wounds that aren't necessarily even logical in the moment, it is
Yeah.
very hard to do those things. But those are the things that heal. Those are the things that break the cycle of abuse. When I know that even though you and I are 50% part of a relationship, I'm still 100% responsible for my own behavior,
Hmm.
then we have a chance to heal. And those are some of
Yeah.
the basic principles that we want to bring to our country. Let me just say that if you want to
Hmm.
jump in. I want to just give
I
the
was just
second
gonna
part.
say, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, the word restrain feels not good. It feels like shackles.
Let me
Um,
let me say it
how do
differently.
we like
Yeah,
express ourselves freely, respectfully, without feeling the need
yeah,
to
right.
restrain, like hold, like you don't want to tell somebody who's very emotional, very expressive, just restrain yourself and stay in the corner or something.
Yeah, no,
Like
it
how do we
isn't that.
express ourselves, you know?
Yeah, it isn't that. Because you do get to say that you're angry. You do get to say that you're really hurt. You do get to say that you're frightened or that you feel betrayed or that you don't know if you can come back from where you are. You get to say all those things. Let me say a different way to say restraint because I don't mean it like a straitjacket or shut up or anything like that. It's really from an adult place, learning how to tolerate our own distress because I think it's not being able to tolerate our own distress that has people act out. I'm so angry at you. I just feel like I want to lash out, slam the door, whatever. So you've probably heard some of these skills. They're well known. I didn't make them up. Some of the nonviolent communication skills are speaking in I statements rather than you. Not you're a jerk, you did this, you did that, you blah, 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 blah. Those are the kinds of statements that inspire
Yeah.
people to become very defensive and reactive. But
Mm,
if I say to you, I'm really hurt because you had an affair, or I'm really angry that you continually come home really late. I've made dinner, it's all ready, and you're not there and you don't call me. You can talk about the other person's behavior, but it's not like you're a jerk because you do that or you're a horrible person or I hate you. It's I'm upset with you when you do X, Y, and Z. And that paves the way for me to say to you, and this is what I would like you to do. I would like you to call me if you know you're going to be late. I would like you to make a greater effort to be home when I say the dinner's ready. I'm just making stuff up here, but
how do
it's really
you
different.
how do you help somebody who's very not self-aware and very triggering and
Yeah.
narcissistic? Have you ever
Mhm.
dealt with like extreme narcissistic people where they're always right, you're always wrong, I
Right.
don't care what you say, um, things like that?
It is very hard to treat narcissism, especially if it's extreme and entitled, you know,
Yep,
because because people
an
who are
entitled narcissist.
right, because people who are narcissistic and entitled in that way don't want to relinquish their power over
Mm,
others, and so they're not usually the first people who come to therapy, um, and then I think we see that, and so, but some of us, we might all have our own little piece of narcissism that's a blind spot that we have, where we
yeah,
feel
because we can understand it, right?
right, right.
On a
We feel
level.
I'm right, you're wrong. Most people feel that way. Most of us do, you know. Um, so I think it leads into the second part of what I think therapy has to offer that many other things don't have to offer, and that is
Mm,
that the most entrenched dysfunctional behaviors that human beings have come from wounds. They come from ways that their early conditioning or their conditioning by their community has caused them to not love themselves, to feel unsafe, to feel like they're always in defense mode, to feel less than, to feel unwanted, to feel unworthy. These are the things that wound people. When people are
mm,
loved, when they're accepted, when there's compassion around them, when there's healthy boundaries around them, when there's good role models for working out conflict around them, role models for working out conflict that are not designed to target or just punish or hate other people or exclude them. And I call these things, I call all those values high tech human relations. We want high tech everything. We
mm,
want high-tech phones. We want high-tech medical care. We want high-tech, travel to space and telecommunications and
yeah.
computers. And the only thing we haven't asked for high-tech yet is human relations. And for me, high-tech human relations are based in what we know are make the healthiest families that produce the healthiest, most constructive, contributing human beings when they become adults. And again, nothing is perfect with human nature. I don't think, there's nurture and nature, and
Yeah.
here's chemical imbalances that have to be factored in. Um, so, but
Mm.
to look at ourselves like, do we really actually want to upgrade our human relations so we can survive here, so that our children will inherit an earth that is sustainable on a physical level and welcomes them and wants them, and they're not running in fear for their lives or silencing their voices for fear of, being jailed for having an alternative point of view.
How would you, or what would you tell somebody who maybe has a family member that's maybe a family member, maybe a coworker, but I relate more to a family member that has a narcissistic trait,
Yeah.
and every time you bring up a certain subject, it's like in like immediate attack defend mode, and
Mhm.
like, do you just not ever talk about it ever and just live life not like having this in the back burner, or what?
Well,
How
I
do you
think
deal
there's
with it?
I think there's a couple of ways to look at that, and one of them is just to go back for a minute to say that the other big contribution of therapy is to really help us address our wounds.
Mhm.
Like, our most dysfunctional behaviors, whether we're really passive and we can't stand up for anything and we're easily conscripted into the next gang or the next movement or the next, whatever, or, and we're just dominated, that comes from being overpowered by other people, from being silenced, from not being allowed to trust our own innate survival mechanisms. So many people
Mm,
become helpless out of that. Other people identify with the aggressor because the last thing they want is to feel vulnerable or easily
mhm.
dominated. But both come from dysfunctional family dynamics on some level,
Trauma
whether
or something.
trauma, sexual abuse, physical violence, racial discrimination, poverty, being blamed for our symptoms. So many people in our culture and in our families become symptomatic when they're hurt by other people, and then they're blamed for their symptoms. And this is what
Mm,
keeps this whole cycle going. A child that goes out on the playground and bullies other children is showing that they're hurting, not that they're a bad child. They're hurting
mm,
and they're angry and they don't know how to deal with it except to hurt other people the way that they've been hurt. And we have to
yeah,
know this about our whole society. The most symptomatic aggressors in our society, including some of the people in the very high places of authority, are acting out their own unhealed mental health wounds. Um, and I think if we educate ourselves as a society to understand it, exactly what I'm talking about, then I think what we know today is that that kind of wounding that creates these symptoms has to be addressed on a family level and a national level. I don't think we can wait for one. I think we have to do both. I think we have to call it out for the purpose of healing on a national level and address it in our families so that we stop producing such wounded people. And I'm telling you that as a therapist of over 30 years, the level of family dysfunction that I have been privy to, just hearing people's stories, people who get up and go to work. These are not people who look dysfunctional to the outside world, but
yeah,
the level of pain that they carry from discrimination, from sexual and physical violence in their homes, from being hurt sometimes in their places of worship, from being
yeah,
judged, is inordinate pain that people are just struggling to survive with
yeah.
and look good because
You
that
can't
seems to be the
see,
yeah,
yeah,
you
you
can't.
can't see mental and
Right,
psychological trauma and pain.
right. And so to me, it's a national crisis. When we're talking about extreme narcissists, they are the tip of an iceberg of mental unwellness on much
Mm,
larger levels. How do people that are, let's just say, super? invested in their own, being the one that knows best for everybody. How did they get there? So instead of just blaming the most symptomatic among us, the school shooters, the people
Mm,
who extort millions of dollars from vulnerable people that they have access to their money. How did they get there? Instead of just
mm.
blaming these people, I think we have to look at the foundational family
Like how to
dynamic
prevent it. Yeah.
100%. And we prevent it by really talking about what creates good mental health, and then doing everything in our power to create that. So in your own life, when you have
Mm,
someone who seems, impervious to what seems like, maybe a more healing or a more rational or a more collectively constructive point of view. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but someone who doesn't agree with you, um, I think
just
for
personal experiences.
right.
Yeah.
I think fighting over the different point of view is at where we already are. It doesn't yield anything. I think the two best options are, and there may be others, but the two that come to my mind right away are, just to inquire. How did you come to those views? Why do you think they're right? What's your personal experience with them? Was there anything that ever happened to you that, were there people in your life that influenced you to think that way? Just to inquire, just to find out where that's person coming from, because chances are, if one of us is open to inquiring where the other person is coming from, it might open the door for them to inquire where we're coming from. Fighting doesn't do that.
Mm,
Fighting just inspires our best defenses. Attack,
yeah.
defend, attack,
It's like
defend.
a fire that, and then when you keep fighting, you're just lighting more fuel
Right.
opposed to diminishing it.
And then, for some people, they're never going to see it the way we do. And that's okay. I'm not going to see it the way they do. Can we live in peace with each other? I've
Mm,
had family members in my family who had thoughts on certain political issues that
mm,
are counter to my own, but
mm.
I love those people. I love them. And so for some of us, we just don't talk about those things. We just agree on, it hasn't even been,
Understanding.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's just an
understanding.
unspoken understanding. We're not going there. We love
Agree to
and care.
disagree.
Yeah, we love and care about each other, and that's more important. It's more important that you're in my life as someone that I love than that I convince you or you convince me of some attitude or political opinion or whatever stand we might want to take. And I think that is the bottom line. We're never going to all agree. I think the problem is not that we don't agree. The problem is not that we don't have different values or that we have conflicting ideas about how things should be done. The problem is we don't know how to handle disagreement in a healthy, peaceful way that is committed to preserving relationship. And those are
It's
mental
hard.
health issues.
It's hard because the first thing that came to my mind when talking about conflict politically was there was this news story of a young 20 something. He had a political shirt on. I think he had MAGA or Trump, supporting Trump, and a Biden supporter or just somebody on the other side intentionally hit and run this kid. Like he was driving and just ran him over in the street after he seen that,
Wow.
just because he had that shirt on.
Yeah, and I think that's tragic, and I think it's very sad, and I think we have to own some collective responsibility in how we got here,
Mm,
because when I was young, people didn't do that. I'm not saying our country was perfect or we had all the skills for working things out, but we kind of knew people had difference of opinion. Some people were Republicans, some people were Democrats. Then
yeah,
there
it's
was the
like what
Green
makes you
Party.
really right? Like what makes
Right.
you really right? Right.
So the state of mind that someone would get in where they felt like entitled to run over somebody with a different opinion or justified to do that, or that it was really the right thing to do, that is a very mentally unwell frame of mind. And that's what we're perpetuating in this country. It's not just individuals. There's movements that are advocating violence and talking about a civil war if so and so doesn't get elected. Why? You know, I say, and I really believe this, war is premeditated murder because it is.
Mm,
And
yeah.
if I was convicted of premeditated murder, I would be in jail. And yet we condone this on these larger levels.
Sad
And so for me, it's really a psychological awakening that is really needed, that we
for
actually,
everybody.
for everybody, we will do better when we care about each other. We will do better when we make it safe for each other to
Start with
thrive
love,
here.
not
Shot
hate.
100%. And I say this again, out of my experience working with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, that love and belonging and safety and having a basic fundamental, needs for survival met, feeling valued, and a commitment to nonviolent conflict resolution are the best food for human beings. And when we're fed that, we become those safe people for other people. And low tech human relations, those are the high tech human relations. Low tech human relations are all the opposite. The lowest tech human relations are hatred and discrimination and violence and suppression of other people's voices and discrimination and intolerance of diversity and a belief that might is right and that we're entitled to use force and kill people if they don't agree with us. Those are low tech human relations and they produce more of the same. And if we keep producing more of the same, none of us are safe. I could be the next person shot in a grocery store by some totally dispossessed,
I
hurting
think
human being.
I would wish for a world of peace, but honestly, like I don't even want to be like the devil's advocate here. I honestly don't think we'll ever, like, it's sad even just coming out of my mouth. Just
Mhm.
like I honestly don't. I think we can reach some sort of world peace, but I think there's always gonna be one person, one group of people, some way of thought that just goes against peace,
Mhm.
and that's just the harsh truth of reality. And I think it's just in our nature. It's going back to the fight or flight. It's in our nature to fight when we don't feel safe. And even though we have all these technologies and high tech thinking, low tech thinking, I think when somebody has a gun to your face, psychologically speaking,
Right.
or maybe physically speaking, you're
Never.
gonna
Right.
um, feel threatened, and war and the
Mhm.
cycle continues. But I do think we could reach a place that the net positive amount of people, the majority of people, are at peace. I do
Well, I
think
think
we can
that's
reach
what we're
that.
looking for is like the tipping point, at least right now. And I
Mm,
understand that discouragement. I mean, I think there's lots of reasons why when people look at what's happening in America and they look around the world, that there are many good reasons to feel discouraged and to feel like it just may not happen for us and we may just off ourselves or something, something equally hideous. Um,
I just think it's in our literally like human like nature, as human animal nature. I think, yeah.
Well, let me say this. Well, two things. One of them is um, I think that it's really important not to give up hope
Mm,
because whatever each one of us can do as an individual in our own lives, we have no idea what the ripple effect will be for the people
mm,
around us. And so, whatever light can shine, whatever love can emanate does really make a difference. And I think it's just really important to not succumb to believing that hatred and violence are stronger because they're not necessarily stronger and they don't have to
mhm.
be, especially if we don't believe in that if we believe that there is a power in love. And what are
I
some of the
do. I think love always wins,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if you just come at a place of love and compassion and understanding, the world
Absolutely.
would be better. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it makes a difference in people's lives, and people are writing about it, and people are doing amazing acts of service out of love and kindness that don't necessarily hit the evening news. You know, people are
Yeah.
going into inner cities and helping people create little local farms on the vacant lots and feeding themselves and volunteering with people in prison to help with rehabilitation. You know, there's all kinds of loving acts of service that are having amazing ripple effects that we don't hear about, and some of the strength is taken out of them because they're not proliferated the way some of the hatred and hate speech is being proliferated, and it's up to us to change that, and we can. And I think that's one of the beauties of podcasts, honestly. Some of the podcasts are so
Yeah.
dedicated to
Free
bringing
speech.
in, more loving, more kind, more constructive voices, to the stage.
That's what I'm trying to do. Trying
Yeah,
to
it's
help
great.
the world find more purpose, passion, and peace in
And
their
look,
everyday lives. That's my mission.
and that's beautiful. And that shows in the way that you talk and the questions that you ask. And it is a service. And who knows, who you've touched that will never tell you that you've touched their
Well,
life.
I was surprised myself. There's statistics on my podcast hosting platform. It shows like 500 different cities, 60 different countries. It shows the
Amazing.
stats. Like I was surprised myself when I seen the stats.
That's
But
beautiful. That's just beautiful. And
yeah.
and this is really what's grassroots. Podcasting in a way is a grassroots movement. It's outside the
Mm,
realm of social media and the big news networks, um, to give voice to many, many different people with many
mm,
ideas, and so many of them are
yeah.
people who really want to, contribute to a healing conversation, to a loving conversation, to a peacemaking conversation. And one of the ways that psychotherapy has to offer that is so valuable for that is that, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I have never seen one person in all the years that I've worked with people who has had an opportunity to dive into what hurt them, to really
Mm.
reprocess the wounding that they've received and start to begin to feel and believe more positive things about themselves. I have never seen one person not become more loving. Now, let me take the negatives. When people have a chance to heal,
Yeah.
they become more loving. They become more compassionate. They become more accepting of other people. They become easier to work with. They become better parents. They become better friends and partners. And it's inevitable. It's the wounding that we didn't have a chance to heal that generates our dysfunctional behaviors on an individual and on a social level. And and I don't know that the average person actually knows that. And that's one of the
Mm.
reasons why I wrote my book, and that's one of the great gifts of psychology.
I know we're talking about America in therapy, but I want to know if it's okay with you to talk about your other two books, if you
Sure.
feel.
Sure.
I want to
Yeah.
know first, I want to know what happened in 1994.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's when I was born, 1994.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that was a I had let's see, I had gotten divorced, and I was in therapy, and a lot of therapy, and really, like, in that process of remembering what happened to me. And it was a very difficult time of my life. I was pretty much raising my children by myself. I was working. Um, I was I was already working as a therapist,
Mm,
and I was doing a lot of my own work. And I had a really hard time with it, as many people do. It was wonderful. The therapy that I did was really wonderful in that I felt like I was finally reaching bedrock truth of who I was, and I craved
mm,
that. I felt like I had to know the truth of what had happened to me and how I had gotten formed the way that I did. And so on that level, it was an incredible time. But it was also a difficult time, um, because of, sort of what I was coming to grips with. And in the process of that, I had always been a writer. Since
Mm.
I wrote a poem when I was 13, and it changed my life, and that was one of those
What
breakthrough
was the
moments.
poem about?
I don't remember. I didn't save any of those poems.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it was just this, um, I think
Feeling.
I think I had been so shut down by what had happened to me that some part of my life force just had to burst forth, and it came out in words, because I really didn't have a voice in the world, and I just wrote this poem for myself. And
What happened to you before that?
before I was 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I had been sexually abused, and I had buried most
Mm.
of it, and so it was a lot of pain that I was burying and trying to manage and trying to overcome, and I didn't even know what it was. At that point in my life,
Mm.
I had no clue about what had
You
happened
just
to
had
me.
these feelings. Yeah.
Horrible, horrible fears, terrible anxiety, fears of death, fears of the dark, and great discomfort in my actual physical body. Very, very uncomfortable being like in a physical
Unease.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I wrote that poem, somehow I connected to my most essential self and my life force. I cannot tell you how it happened. I don't know why it
Mm.
happened. But after that, writing became this very sacred thing for me, where I felt like it was an open door, or a
Like a
door that
safe
was
space.
possible to open, a safe place,
Yeah.
and a possible opening to something that I craved, which was this deep connection to a place of love and connection with myself. And in 1994, and I wrote, I kept journals,
Mhm.
and I wrote little pieces, and I wrote a lot of poetry, and sometimes I had that experience of connection, and a lot of times I didn't, but I kept on going. Um, and in 1994, I really made that deep connection in with my highest self in writing again. And it
Mm.
was like this floodgate opened, and it was really like, my first 2 books are about that. They're about my own healing journey. The first book is called, A Light in the Darkness, and I felt like my life was kind of in the dark, and all of a sudden, there were bursts of light that came through. I mean, I had some very phenomenal, experiences of connection to something very divinely loving, I would say, in
Mhm.
different times in my life. It gave me hope. And in 1994, it felt like that door really opened. And a friend of mine had said that she had read that there was a journaling technique, which I would highly recommend for anyone, um, where you just have a question, like, I'm sad, or I just can't get over my depression, or I don't know how to deal with this situation with my boss, or I'm at a loss with my kid, or whatever it is, whatever your question is, large or small, it doesn't matter. And you
Mhm.
just kind of put your pen to paper, and you ask your highest self to answer the question. And then you just tune in, and whatever comes, you write down. And I had done that many years before and really had quite an experience of feeling like there was a higher self there.
It's like a letting go. Like for me,
Right, of my
journaling and
conscious
writing
mind.
is yeah, it's it's a letting go process for me, at least when I
Mhm.
write.
An opening, an
Mhm.
opening, right. And that's kind of what that was like letting go of your conscious mind and what you think you should answer, or the best that you can come up with, and just opening to hear what your wisest self has, because we all have one. And many people don't know that, or they've never been allowed to listen to it because they've been forced to listen to somebody else. Um,
Or that's all they know.
that's all
Like
they
you don't
know.
know what you don't know, right?
Totally, totally. So in 1994, that began for me in a big way, and I really made this profound connection to my highest self, and it just opened up these doors to, like, why did I go through the abuse that I went through? What was it
Mm.
connected to?
It helped
Um,
you process and reflect and finally start healing.
Totally. And it was an amazing experience, and I felt like I got so many healing messages from that source in myself that I wanted to share them, and that's what the 2 first books are about. Um, and then
So
actually,
Into the Fire, I
mhm,
want to
the
ask a
continuer
question
yeah.
about that. So how how do people, whoever's listening, how do we find divine meaning and purpose in our struggles?
Yeah, that's a I mean, I don't have the whole answer to that. I don't know that anyone does, so I'm not gonna pretend that I do. Um, but I'll
Yeah.
share this with you. I think, first of all, I think the first thing is to look for that. To look for that there is divine meaning
Mm,
and purpose in all our struggles, and to know that it's possible to find it, because many people don't even have that language. They're just trying to block it out, or they're trying to overcome it, or they're trying to
or
compensate.
victimized.
Right, where they stay
Mm,
feeling victimized, or they try to compensate by becoming, a millionaire or a people pleaser, or they
uh,
shrug
like,
themselves up, or whatever they
um,
do.
they place contingencies on
Right,
how they should
conditional.
feel.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So I think it's important to know that it is really possible to spin that straw into gold. And I think that's,
Mm,
I think that's a good metaphor that comes straight out of fairy tales, right? That it's possible to do that. And, for me, one of the things that really helped me very early on in my journey was reading autobiographies and biographies of people who had overcome great odds. It gave me hope.
mm,
It inspired
yeah,
me, it's possible. Like, and I think I was so
yeah.
hungry for that. And a lot of the movies that
Stories.
people
Mm,
like are movies like that, where people come from a really tough background, or
the
they're
hero's journey. Yeah.
right. And I think we need more of that, like more people who can share a hero's
Like
journey
proof. Yeah.
without becoming a narcissist in the process. If you
Mm,
know what I mean? Like,
or the
I'm
ego.
sharing this
Yeah.
sharing this with you because I care, not I'm sharing this with you
I've
because I
seen,
want you to
yeah.
bow down.
No, yeah, I've
Right.
seen I follow some people like that I started following them for like that type of inspiration because they're financially successful.
Uh-huh.
But then this social media influencer, he started to do that. Like, well, I did it, so like, you let
Mhm.
your ego
Right.
start to get in
Right.
front.
Right. And I
So,
think that can be a step in a healing process. Sometimes you sort of have to reclaim yourself in a big way. But
mm,
the way I look at it is sort of we can be on a pendulum swing. If way over here, I, felt like crap and I didn't think well of myself, and way over here, I develop a bigger personality and a bigger sense of myself. Hopefully, I'm going to come back to some place in the middle where
mm,
I understand. For me, the blessing, one of the biggest blessings of the pain that I went through as a child and a young adult was that it really made me sensitive to pain in other people. I don't take
mm,
that for granted when people are struggling, when they're lost, when they don't know, what's up and where to go and who to turn to, and they don't like themselves and they feel like a failure. I know that place. And so,
empathy.
yeah, and it gives me compassion for what we're doing in the world, and I'm not alone. There's millions of people like me who feel that kind of compassion, and who, really wanna be a voice of something different, because we've all been hurt by feeling criticized and less than or left out,
Mm,
um, or, judged as inferior in some way, whether you're a woman or you're trans or you're black or you're whatever,
anything. Yeah,
anything,
anything.
anything, right.
For me, it was because my eyes were a little squinty.
I can't do that. But, people will look for anything. D you don't they
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with anyone. There's nothing wrong with anyone, but we make that up. And a lot of what we do, we make up. I'll tell you a good story. I had a client who, had a very deprived childhood emotionally. She had a very
Mm,
depressed single mom, and she was kind of a loner kid. Her mom didn't, like, invite friends over for her. Her mom was just trying to survive the best she could with her own
mhm,
depression. And so my client grew up feeling very isolated and lonely and left out. And then, of course, that was her experience at school, because she didn't really know how to make friends. And then she started to see herself as someone who couldn't make friends, and blah, blah, blah.
mm,
And she ended up getting married and having a daughter herself, and then quickly getting divorced because she had married someone who was really much like her mother. And
mm.
She had a job running a small office, and there was a woman who came to work for her. I tell this story in my book. There was a woman who came to work for her who really reminded her of herself, but she wasn't aware of that. All she knew was that she couldn't stand this woman. She couldn't stand the woman's neediness.
Oh
She
wow.
couldn't stand how the woman really wanted to be included. And she just had an emotional wall against this woman because the unhealed part of her couldn't tolerate seeing that reflection of actually her own wound. And so she blocked this woman out. And when she was in therapy, and she really got to go back down into the pain of her childhood and how lonely she had felt and how left out on the playground she had felt and how
Mm-hmm.
other she had felt. Spontaneously, in the middle of her therapy, she started talking about how she was treating this woman because she saw that she was doing to this woman what had
It's
been done to her.
like a memory.
Right. And so, it's really that healing of our own wounds that opens the door to not repeating them with other people. It
Hmm.
that's what projecting the shadow is onto other people. We project our own unhealed wounds that we can't tolerate looking at or feeling, and we ascribe them to other people and judge
Hmm.
them. And that's happening all over the human race today.
Phyllis, I feel like we could talk forever. uh, I don't get that with every guest. Like I just have constant questions. But
Well, feel
are
free.
you
Yeah, go ahead.
are you do you have anything else you'd like to express before we move on to my final?
Yeah, I just really want to say that I really believe that everyone can make a difference. I believe there can be a tipping point. I don't think I don't think that we have to wipe out most of the human population before we get it. I hope that that's not what we do. And I know a lot of people who feel really discouraged and feel like they can't make a difference. And I would just say I really don't believe that. I believe every single person can make a difference, whether you're just kind and loving to your neighbor or to the checkout person, or you give some of you make a contribution to world hunger. We can all make a difference. And sometimes it's the little things. If you think about your own life, who made a difference in my life? I had a
Mm,
high school teacher who thought I was a really good writer. You know what?
mm-hmm.
I'll never forget her. I'll never forget her.
Mm,
She reflected something back to me that I needed to have reflected, and it really helped me believe in myself as a writer. So, you just for somebody telling, another person, "Wow, you have a beautiful singing voice," or "I love the way you are with animals," or, "You know what? When you come into the room, you just light it up, and I'm so grateful for you." We can all make a difference by appreciating each other. And we can certainly make a difference by healing our own wounds if we're really suffering. And I want to emphasize that it takes courage and strength to do that. It's not a sign of weakness at all.
yeah, it really does take, especially in the podcasting world, it takes courage and strength to freely speak what you believe in
Right.
with the expectation of backlash or
Right.
disagreement.
Right.
And it takes courage. You have to die, be willing to die on the cross like Jesus for his beliefs.
Yeah. I
So
think that's really true. And I think that's the courage that people who really care, that people who have something to contribute to the well-being of humanity and the earth, um, don't lose heart, and have the courage of your convictions because we need all of us. And who knows where the tipping point will come. And one of the things I like to say is, I think, the boat could be sinking here for humans. I certainly hope that that's not the case. But the only
mm,
reason why I say that is because if I knew I was on a boat that was sinking, if you reached out your hand to me and you were Black, or you were Muslim, or you were trans, or you were Native, or you were some other
mm,
population that I thought was other, I wouldn't care. If you reached out your hand to me and you were going to save my life from a sinking boat, would I judge you? No, I would be grateful. And I think we really need to see each other.
Like
We
gratitude,
we
yeah.
need each other here for all of us to turn this ship around.
Well, where should we begin? Uh, this game, I pulled off random cards already.
Okay.
Share something off the record about when you feel most judgmental.
When I feel most judgmental.
Yeah,
I think that's a great
you can
card
read it.
because
Yeah.
um I'm the most judgmental when it comes to okay. I'm the most judgmental when it comes to um well,
It's a
I
hard one,
would
right?
I yeah, it's a hard one. I would like to say that I feel like part of my growth and development is to restrain some of my judgmentalness because I grew up in a
Mm,
very judgmental family and we
same,
believed in being judgmental. I mean, that was like a sign of
same.
intelligence, right? That you were
It's like better because you
right,
you feel you have this sense of entitlement and narcissism
right,
when you get to point the fingers like, oh, look at them, like,
right, right,
yeah.
right. And I'll give an example. Um I was in the grocery store and this I don't know what I'm most judgmental about, probably like, really, really violent kinds of, rhetoric I'm not crazy
Or
about,
like
but
8 or
but
something,
but even a
yeah.
little thing like this, like I was in the grocery store and this moment really stands out to me, and there was a woman, walking up down one of the aisles, and her hair was dyed bright blue, and
Uh,
my first thought was, "You don't really look good with blue hair." Right? Right. And then I thought to myself, "What the hell?" Why do I have to do that?
mhm,
She loves her blue hair, or she wouldn't have done it, or it means something to her that she, wants to have a statement with her hair or,
mm,
whatever. It's like that's her self-expression. And so, I guess I would say and I'm not perfect. I'm not saying I'm not judgmental.
yeah.
But I think I really try to pull myself back and put myself in
When
the
you
other
have those
person's shoes.
thoughts, yeah.
Right. Because as a psychotherapist, and like I shared with you, I know that even, when someone is, I don't know, they're doing something that I don't like. I
Mhm,
know it comes from their wounding. I know it does. And once you know that, there's a space for some compassion. There's a space for judgment to fall to the wayside. Um, and so I guess I would just say that I work with that in my life. Not perfect at all, because I think we just, we do have judgments and we do have things that we like
yeah.
better than other
I know
things.
mine I know mine is just fat, like, extremely morbid, fat, obese people.
Mhm.
I'm immediately, like, stop eating donuts and just, like
Right.
or just stop drinking so much, soda. Like,
Uh-huh.
that's the immediate
Yeah.
thought I come because, um, like, if you just drink water, you're gonna lose like, if you're morbidly obese and you're, and you just switch to just drinking water only, you will start to lose fat like
Mhm.
like
Right.
butter or whatever, I don't know.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I
And
don't
I think we just also have to have compassion though, even with that, and
yeah,
we
yeah.
have, an addicted to thin society that we live
Mm,
in, addicted to fit and addicted to this and that, for sure. And I think it's just important to know that many people who are morbidly obese have never had any education about what a good diet is and don't have
mm,
access to healthy food, for one thing. And many people who are morbidly obese also are really it's a psychological issue where
another
they're
pain, yeah,
armoring themselves against some kind of hurt. And that's kind of
yeah.
known in the world of psychology. So, I think we just keep cultivating our compassion.
We just yeah, we always have to like I said, we always had to come back from a place of compassion and love.
Right, right. And it doesn't mean you don't have the judgment. It doesn't mean that the sign of a totally developed person is that they have no judgment. I don't know anybody
Mm,
like that. I
yeah,
don't imagine I will ever be that person. But what I can do is keep pulling myself back from it. I can recognize it and say to myself, I don't want to come from there.
Yeah.
and really
I think that's part
redirect
of the
my own
ego as
energy.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Phyllis, you ready for your final questions?
Final question.
um, so I have five final questions. The first one is, what is your biggest regret in life?
Oh, my biggest regret in life might be that I didn't know what I know now when my kids were
Mm,
little. I, you know, being a single mom was really hard for me, and I made a lot of mistakes. And my children are magnificent adults right now, and they're incredible human beings. But it's hard, when you love someone my three children that much, and loved them just so deeply that I wish I had been able to have done more healing myself and known some of the things I know now when they were really little.
mm, I feel that as a single dad
Mm.
myself, and
Mm.
trying to balance surviving yourself
Right,
and
right,
and also for me, living in your passion is very important for my life and your
right,
purpose. So
right,
it's like trying to balance all of that at the same time,
right,
trying to teach and set a foundation up for your kids to find their own selves
right.
and individuality as they become adults.
That's right.
It's it's a journey.
And fortunately, it's never too late to be a different person than you were before.
Mm,
So I have a very different relationship with my children than I did when they were little, and it wasn't
you always have
bad.
tomorrow. You
Right.
always have
Yeah.
tomorrow, or you always have the
Right.
next moment,
You
like
do.
now.
And the relationships continue to grow and change. And I'm so grateful for that.
That's awesome. My next question is, who or what has made the biggest impact in your life so far?
I guess I would say, I mean, there's many things I could put on that list, but I guess I would say that I feel blessed that I somehow came into this world with something that held a connection to what is so divinely loving, even when my life looked so dark, and I really feel like something in me, something intuitive, something connected. I don't know what you would say, different people have different words for
I
that
call it
feeling. So,
energy and
yeah.
frequency.
Yeah.
That's what I like to call it.
And so let's just say that the energy and frequency that somehow I was blessed with has really guided me through my life, even when I didn't. I mean, I can look back and see guidance where I didn't know it at the time. And so I just
Mm,
feel really, really grateful for that. And that's probably been the biggest influence in my life. And certainly there've been a number of people who have been profoundly influential as well.
what is one lesson you learned the hard way?
Mm. Well, I guess it's kind of what we talked about earlier, and that is within the pain that I went through
Mm,
were the seeds of my greatest purpose. And I think you kind of have to learn that one the hard way. And maybe, you know,
yeah, I always make the analogy of anything you learn the hard way. It's kind of like a baby learning how to walk. You're
right,
gonna make mistakes. You're gonna start crawling and falling and then getting back up, and then eventually
right,
you learn and you grow
right,
and you learn how to walk.
right. Totally, totally.
My next question is, what would you do or experience in life if you had all the time and all the money in the world?
Mm. What would I experience in life or do? Um, well, I think at this juncture in my life with the book that I've just written, which I, have really put my heart and soul into and care deeply about sharing what I learned through that book. I guess at this moment I would just go everywhere I could and talk
Shout it
about
from the
really
mountaintops.
right. I would. and I'd give away hundreds and millions of free books.
Everyone has a copy underneath their
Yeah.
pillow.
Yeah. And not, I don't mean that like my book is the savior of the world. I just mean, I just mean
Yeah.
that it is what I have worked so hard to contribute at this point, and it may not be my
Mm,
last book, but it really holds some of what I hold dear, and I feel like we're starving for as a human race is how do we get out of it? What can we each
mm.
do?
Yeah, because I don't think people they don't necessarily want to fight, you know? Like I
Right,
don't think we want to fight. It just kind of just happens sometimes.
right, right.
So I think your book will help with that. My
Thank
final
you.
question, Phyllis, is there anything you'd like to share to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think I probably already said it, but
Yeah.
it's usually the thing that I leave at the end, and that is, dream bigger than even you're dreaming now. If there's something like you asked me, if you had all the resources and there was nothing in your way, what would your dream be for helping us survive here better, helping us come together, helping us cooperate, helping us love one another and care for one another? Um, because, we are capable of having enormous dreams that nobody ever thought was possible that we've brought to life. Telecommunications, nobody would, flying airplanes, rocketing to the moon, transplanting organs. There was a time when that would be preposterous to even think those things were possible. So let's have our biggest dreams for world peace and loving one another and sustainability and a really green fertile earth that is a magnificent place for human beings to participate in, not dominate and control.
Phyllis Leavitt, everybody. Go check out her new book, America in Therapy, and support her on her mission to for world peace. I support it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
With that, everybody, stay curious. Don't give up. You got this. Peace.
Beautiful.